Hello everyone, I'm back again with another valuation. This time I'm going over Uber. So I guess we'll just hop right into it. I don't know if you noticed also I made my little format a little nicer. You'll see I kind of outlined everything. It's pretty cute. Anyways, I went through with the valuations that I used, the multiples model, a Graham model, a price to book adjusted multiple, and then a discounted earnings per share model. Um, we got 105 for the multiples, 133 for a Graham model, 90 for price to book adjusted, and then 150 for the discounted earnings per share. And then I have a lot to say about Uber. It's riskier than the other ones I've gone over, Arista and Google, but I still believe it's undervalued and it's a great value play. As you can see here also, if we go off of the risk-free rate and the cash flow that you're going to be getting from that, in about, I think it's 2 years. Yeah, in about 2 years, Uber's current growth is going to usurp that very quickly, as you can see here. The risk-free rate I'm using also is 4.5. I believe it might be a little bit lower, a little higher today, um, but it's going to be around 4.5, so I'll use that as a general basis. So when I take all these values, average them out, I got a 41.77% upside, and then I apply my 15% margin of safety. That's going to give me a value of $101, which is still 20% upside, which I rate as a buy. For the analyst ratings, we have 42 that say buy, 10 that say hold, and then 0 that say sell. And then I'll get into just a short overview of the models and what I thought the number should be. So we go into a multiples model, and this is where I found some difficulties with comparing Uber to the industry because they are essentially the only decently profitable ride-sharing business. Uh, Hold on, let me turn my car off. There we go. They are the only decent profitable ride-sharing business. Um, in the industry, and that kind of gives them a unique position where no other company kind of has similar priced earnings, or it might be skewed because it might be like near negative because they're not profitable. But anyways, I believe Uber is the only spot in this position. So when I'm comparing it, I just try to compare it to who would be a threat to them. So Lyft is a threat. DoorDash is a threat because they have Uber Eats. That's a part of their business. Tesla is a threat. And then Google could be a slight bet because of, or a slight competitor because of Waymo, although I don't think it's going to cause any issues there. I took the 2026 earnings per share estimate of 3.53. The average and the mean really don't appropriately describe this, since again it's in such a unique position. But its forward price to earnings is something I can go off of, and it's about 31.76 right now. Historically, it's been about 22.05. So I came to the general consensus that it should be trading at about a 30. Um, and again, like I said over here, Uber is a standout in general. It's since turning profitable, they've been able to maintain their stable PE ratio, along with the forward PE ratio that's been pretty stable for the past 3 years, as you can see. It's about 22. Um, and then that's why I believe it should be trading at about a 30. So that gives us an upside of about 25%, which is a buy. Using a price to books model, for the price to book models, first I have a Graham model. Again, we just take the trailing 12-month earning per share, which number is going to be different due to a large recognition of income in Q4 of 2024. So that's why the trailing 12 months and then the annual is going to look a bit different. So if I go here, yeah, again, so if we go over here, um, you can see if we go to quarterly. We're going to go to net income. There's a spike here, and this is what's causing the trailing 12 months to look uh, a bit higher than the next year's analyst estimate. That's what you see right here. So, ugh, well, mouth's dry. So, when we get back to this, I took the trailing 12 months earnings per share, and then I took 8 as the price earnings of a company with no growth. Its long-term growth rate I find was about a 12%, which in this formula we're just expressing as 12. I took this from its revenue growth, net income growth, free cash flow growth, and then it's also its KPI growth. as you can see here. They've been increasing organically their trips and gross bookings every single quarter. Same with revenue, and then EBITDA has also made a flip, so it was free cash flow in the trailing 12 months, which is good to see. Same with cash flow, free cash flow per share. So that's what I'm taking when I'm viewing Uber. I took about a 12, which is honestly could be even conservative, and then I'm applying 1.5% uh, or 1.5 growth multiplier. Again, 1 is going to be no growth, so 1.5 accounts for a good amount of growth within the company over the next couple of years. And so I believe Uber's in that position where they can still have a lot of growth. And then I go back, the things that are always going to stay constant, the average yield of a AAA bond, 4.4. And then looking at the 20-year AAA corporate bond yield, we have about 4.92. So this is actually going to intrinsically value Uber lower since when bonds are more attractive and yields higher interest rates, um, that's going to be more attractive to invest in bonds than it would be to invest in stocks. So this right here, I mean, if the 20-year AAA corporate bond yield was 4.4, if you see on this formula, these two would just cancel out, and then your value would just be left with what you have right here, earnings per share times the price earnings of a company with no growth, and then plus the growth multiplier. So that's what I'm applying here. And then we're just adjusting for intrinsically if bonds are more valuable right now or if equities are more valuable. In this case, bonds are appearing to be more valuable, at least with this current 20-year AAA corporate bond yield. So that's going to devalue it a little bit. However, it still gives us an insane upside of about 60%, which could be a little bit skewed because of the trailing 12 months earnings per share. So we have to keep that into account. So when we're looking at an industry multiples model, again, it's a bit difficult as the price to book for most of the industry here is a little off because it's all tech. However, for Uber's price to book, we got about 8.35. Lyft's was 8.05. Uber was about 8.35, as we see right here. DoorDash, Tesla, notoriously high, and then Alphabet, which is about 6. Um, so then I took the average return on equity, and this is going to be uh, basically not applicable because Uber's equity base is already very low and they have a lot of liabilities. Um, as you look at their balance sheet, you'll see that uh, even though they have like an 80% return on equity, 70% return on equity, it's because their equity base is quite low. So I don't know if I can find, um, let's see. I guess I should also do a video on my overall portfolio and what I own. So that couldn't be a bad, it shouldn't be a bad idea. So I go to where are you at? Uber, wonderful. Right, so we go to Uber. We're gonna go down to its financials. As you can see here, total equity is, even though it has doubled, it's about 21, is that billion, I believe? Yeah, 21 billion. Liabilities is 29 billion. So that's actually higher than 21, obviously, which is definitely going to skew the net income because if they have a massive amount of net income, um, i.e., in the last year, 2024, uh, dividing that by the average shareholder equity, yeah, it's going to give a whack percentage because the equity base is already so low. So I'm not going to take return on equity into account here when I'm improving the book value per share. So therefore, I'm just going to leave it at a 5 because they are profitable, so uh, they are returning on the equity. But again, it's not going to be like Google's where they have a high equity base and it's been consistently 25 to 30%. So with that, I get the book value per share. I took Uber's 5-year average price to book, which is about 8.76. The industry average is about 9.41. The S&P's price to book, which right now is about a 5. And then, of course, a retention ratio of about 100% because they don't distribute a dividend. And then I believe a justified return on equity is again 5%. So that's going to give us a 5% growth in book value per share, adjusting it to about 10.6. And then we value that at about a 90, which is an upside of about 7.5%, which is a buy based off of the book value, which again, these are tech companies that I mainly look at. So book values are less important, although still very important. So we go to the final valuation method, which is just the depreciated earnings per share. I took the trailing 12 month, the 2025 estimate, 2026 estimate, and then the estimated growth we see here between the 2025 estimate, and this is not trailing 12 months, by the way. This is just by the end of the year. So 2025 estimate of about 2.84, and then the 2026 estimate about 3.53, which signals a 25% growth is what analysts expect. 24% growth is what analysts expect. Its 5-year historic growth rate isn't really applicable since it was unprofitable and then flipped to profitability. So it's kind of hard to determine that growth rate. However, I would just take the estimated growth of this right here, and then I'm going to discount that by about half to say that earnings per share is going to grow about 12% every year. If we look at the stats we have over here, where's earnings per share? Here we go. Trailing 12 months, obviously the year is going to be skewed since it was actually ridiculous down here where it was unprofitable. Again, you can see how the growth is a bit hard to find since we're negative, and then we flip to profitability. This is what makes Uber slightly risky, is that this stuff is still brand new. It's not established like a Google or an Amazon. Um, Therefore, it's going to be a bit more risky. However, I think there's some promising growth, and there's some good qualitative aspects that I'll get into at the end. Again, I took a 30 PE ratio, I believe to be appropriate. And then I just came down here, took the earnings per share, took its price earnings right now, and then we got the 2025 estimate, which is going to be year one. It's slightly different to the way I used it before, but it ends up working out the same way. So 2026 is going to be 3.53, and then we increase that by 12% every year. Then we discount that using our discount rate, which is just going to be beta times the market risk premium. So again, the market risk premium is S&P returns minus the risk-free rate. It's always going to be about 5.5%. And then Uber's beta is 1.4. So we're just taking that risk-free rate and then adding it to that kind of volatility ranking of a beta times the market risk premium on how volatile Uber can be. And then we're going to discount it with that rate of about 12.2%. I use about 4% for the terminal earnings per share growth rate. You can use about 3 to 5, so I just like to stay average, get 4. And then we go down here. And again, we did the same thing, except now we discounted it using present value formula. And then we end up getting, after 5 years of this expected growth, about 76% upside of 150, which is a buy. What is time at right now? Don't know, but it's probably really fucking long. I don't even 13 minutes. Okay, not bad, actually. So, let's get into the thesis. So, again, Uber is riskier than what I would normally go for, but there's a lot of things in place that could definitely make Uber a dominant figure. It's clear that they brutally smashed their competition, and the industry as a whole has been unprofitable for a long time, but Uber has cracked the formula and ended up being essentially the only profitable ride-sharing company. It proved to be a difficult business model, but one that can be profitable. Uber was technically, if you think about it, first to market in terms of profitability, which is a story that's definitely compelling for its future in ride sharing, especially with the growing demand, as you can see in the KPIs, that the trips and gross bookings that they had and how they grew. Um, so, uh, yeah, that makes it compelling. However, they do face a clear threat with autonomous driving, mainly with Tesla, since Waymo has already expressed interest in partnering with them, and they already have partnered with them. Additionally, since Waymo is primarily used in cities, Tesla plans to roll this out everywhere. So, while I think that it is a valid concern, Tesla having the autonomous driving, they lag behind severely in technology, at least at the stage that they're at. But you never know what they might be able to innovate on, as they do have a flexible company, as shown before, and where they can pivot. My own conviction, though, is that Tesla is not going to be a worthy competitor, as they lack leadership and have poor management skills that might hold them back. However, today we saw that Elon Musk left Doge, so he's going to be I would assume going back to Tesla and focusing on his main core business. However, I don't know. Anything could happen. So that's definitely a risk with Uber is Tesla's ability to grow and what kind of targets they have. Um, Anyways, but if we're excluding that, Uber has seen or Tesla has seen revenue decrease over the past year. Vehicle deliveries have decreased, and then a multitude of other things that have negatively contributed to their fundamentals. For those reasons, I think that Uber has a great chance against Tesla's competitive auto driving business. The other aspect, Waymo, could be a challenge, but they've already partnered, like I said, and they've proven that the two businesses can coexist in cities like San Francisco, where demand for rides is abundant. I've seen it myself. I mean, after I got done with, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Beta Breakers, but if anyone's done like some kind of event in San Francisco after it, rides and ride sharing is just so in demand. It's like so expensive to get an Uber, and you gotta wait. Same with Waymos. So I think the demand's always going to be there in cities like that. So if you need more convincing that Uber is far ahead of its peers, at least in the rideshare space, not like DoorDash or the food delivering. Look at its compared growth of the sector on date. Um, some of the growth numbers might be skewed, like earnings per share, because they were negative. But the difference in the growth rate is clear in the industry. If we take a look down here, this is absolutely insane. So this number that you see right here, where my mouse is hovering over, is the sector comparison, meaning Uber is 441% higher in the revenue growth year over year than the rest of the sector. I believe that. There we go. Difference of sector. Okay, so yeah, you see that the revenue growth year over year for Uber is about 17.6. Again, this is where I got some of my earlier ideas from, not earlier ideas, earlier predictions from in 12%, 17, 20%. I got it from here. So this is about 17.6% for Uber year over year. Their forward revenue growth, so the expected revenue next year growth is about 15.92. Again, look at the difference with the sector. EBITDA is a little bit obviously these ones are insane, especially earnings per share, because that's gonna be always be skewed because they were negative. But the revenue growth is mainly the concerning one. Not concerning, but like astounding one. 441% difference to the sector is insane. They just completely obliterated Lyft. Um, yeah, and then another impressive factor about Uber is its KPIs. Organically, Uber grows its trips and bookings at around 18% year over year, which is always good to supplement with tech companies. You have that organic growth aspect, which can back up future growth expectations. Um, so going back to Lyft also, Uber has obliterated them completely. First off, Lyft generates about 27 billion in revenue a year, with that growing at about an 18% rate. And then Uber generates that, get this, in about a quarter. Not only that really, but double that amount at a growth rate of around 18% as well. And then to summarize this part, Uber has nearly full control over the rideshare. Actually, before I say this, if we go down here, I believe I have it. Yeah, so we look at the revenue for Lyft on the trailing 12 months. Um, what is it? We've seen about Q1 2025, we had about 6 billion, with about 27 over the year, 18% over 2 years, and about 10 or 9.5% over 5 years. We go to Uber, Q1 2025, 45 billion. That isn't even fucking close. It's absolutely ludicrous. That is what, 5, 9, what, about 8.5 or something times more. Um, yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. So they get more rides in a quarter than Lyft does basically in the year, by double in a quarter, which is absolutely insane, and growing at arguably a faster rate. Over the recent 2 years, you've seen that Lyft grows faster, but in the past 5 years, it's been about 25% a year. In the past year, it's about 17%. So again, insane growth that is far ahead of the competition. Um, Again, like I said, it's a tough time comparing Uber to competitors since many of them are unprofitable and operating at extreme negatives and low margins. Um, but uh, and that fact in itself gives it hard. It makes it hard to give Uber an appropriate price to earnings ratio. Um, as you could say that any ratio is justified in its current position. It could be super low because of reasons and super high because of other reasons. Um, but the one thing that is clear is the fact that they shouldn't be trading at the current price earnings multiple due to their rapid growth. At least that's what I believe. And then another aspect of Uber's business is Uber Eats, competitor to DoorDash. I use this comparison again. I think I already said this, but I used it as a comparison. Also, see the valuation drop after each earnings report. Um, However, all the organics are growing faster and all of the fundamentals are growing. Yeah, it's a good sign for Uber as a buy right now. And then when you look at earnings per share growth, it's hard to determine a good rate since Uber is recently profitable. The trailing 12 months could give a better idea, but even then, quarter Q4 kind of skews it. If we look at the earnings per share here, it's been kind of rocky. And then Q4 we had that surge, and then Q1 again it goes back down. And then we look at revenue sales. This is paints a more clear story, about 27% annualized 5-year growth, which is great to see. So, overall, while Uber doesn't specifically meet my criteria, I think that its story is very impressive, and its turn to profitability in the ride-sharing industry is promising for the future, especially since they're the first to do it. I believe the challenges they face are Tesla, if they get their act together, and then Waymo slightly. Um, so even though I believe, Jeez, sorry. Even though I believe Uber has nearly a monopoly in the industry, um, I I think that it can still face some challenges like Tesla if they get their act together, which is their main big issue. However, again, the growth and the story that they have, being the first profitable one in that industry, I like that. That's something I'd look out for. Um, So, while these challenges pose a threat to Uber, what makes them promising is that they appeal to both the rider side and worker side. Um, Again, this is just another side of how it benefits, and you can argue all you want about how they're underpaid. But it is true that a lot of people work for Uber and a lot of people order through Uber and Uber Eats and use a product that involves Uber, the app. So, uh, again, that's another reason I think it appeals to a large market of people. And then I believe for these reasons and then the one I just said, I think that Uber is I should change this. I think it's a cautious buy. Um, Oh, I guess I do say it. If you can stomach the inherent risk that comes with a newly profitable company and industry, it's definitely a cautious buy. One of the more riskier ones that I've covered. It doesn't exactly fit all of my specific criteria for what I would be looking for normally. However, I do think that the story they have is promising. Um, and I think that the industry they're in has a lot of ways to go and will always be in demand, especially in big cities like San Francisco. And Uber's at the forefront of that. Again, that's what I look out for is companies that are at the forefront. Um, so yeah, with that, I'm concluding this. But Uber is definitely a riskier buy. Um, it signals that it's undervalued. However, in this case, valuations might not be as useful as the qualitative aspects of the company. So that's why I think that Uber, Uber has good qualities. I do think that. So yeah, thank you very much. I guess maybe I'll record a video. Yeah, maybe I'll record a video going over something else. We'll see. All right, have a good one.